to the Beat Down Podcast. Come on, Beat Down Podcast.
Welcome to the Beat Down Podcast. Today we welcome Matthew Thomas. Mr. Thomas works with photography and videography and claims nothing genuinely brings him joy like getting behind and in front of his camera. Matthew currently creates sketches on TikTok, vlogs on YouTube, and posts photography on his Instagram. His business, 13th Hour, is designed to help you create great videos. Hey, Matt, thanks for being here. Does it matter, Matthew?
I generally actually go by Matthew these days, and it's actually kind of interesting that a lot of people, they'll ask me that, and when I was younger, it was just kind of like, I don't really care, but as I've gotten older, I was like, I kind of prefer Matthew, so
yeah,
generally go by that. But thank you for having me on, man. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Yeah, man, I can relate to that. Like, as a Dan, like when I was growing up, people would call me Danny. And like, as I got older, I'm like, I don't know about Danny, like I feel like a Dan more so, but yeah, I don't know. I get that. I get that whole vibe of like, you want to be called what you want to be called, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, Matthew. So, do you mind telling your audience, telling our audience here, who you are and what do you do?
Yeah. So of course, actually, when it comes to being online in any regard, I have myself set up as Matthew N. Thomas. I did that to be very specific because anytime you search up Matthew Thomas, at least in my location, you started seeing like, oh, there's an author called Matthew Thomas and there's a football player. And I was like, okay, well, like I'm not going to be at the point where I can just go by Matthew Thomas and people are going to know who I am. I'm no Peter McKinnon or anything like that. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go by Matthew N. Thomas. So that's how I set myself up. But going into who I am, that's a little bit of a difficult question. It always has been for me, man. Like growing up, I never really had the sense of like really individuality and learning about myself and everything like that. It was always kind of one of those things where I was always like, man, taking care of other people or trying to do things for other people. And so I'm really coming into learning more about myself. So when I try to say like, who am I? It's like a big question. It's like, well, who am I? And that's kind of one of the things that I try to start focusing on, especially when it comes to my YouTube channel, my vlogs. I kind of go into this area of like really trying to figure out who I am because I know the things I like. I know the things that I'm trying to do. But the question of who I am is a very difficult one for me. Yeah, actually, I feel like it has been, especially because there are times when I'm alone. And when I'm alone, I feel the most comfortable. The most comfortable being myself and talking to a camera. It's nice. It's kind of like having like, it's gonna sound a little funny, but it's kind of like having a good friend that's with you. But they don't say anything. They just listen to you. And it's nice to just kind of, in a way, be heard by the camera and then kind of go from there to posting it. And I really just, with the vlog specifically, whenever I'm talking and I'm trying to just like be myself as genuinely as possible, I'm like, just getting excited because then I start like getting energy from it. And I'm just like, wow, this is in essence an area of who I am. I'm excited about, taking these videos and talking to people and really just like trying to learn about myself in the journey. I don't know if you've ever heard about like the whole thing is like, it's about the journey, but not like the destination.
Oh yeah.
And that really like sometimes under certain things, it's really hard for me to understand that concept. But then with this, it really is that. It's like, I don't really even know where the destination is right now. I just know it's somewhere out there. And right now I'm enjoying where I'm going and I'm enjoying taking the steps, learning more about myself and kind of putting myself out there to be like, hey, I don't know if you're like me, but if you are, hopefully this helps you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a good thing to look at. It's because like, the past and the future doesn't really exist, right? The future hasn't happened, so it doesn't exist, and the past is already past, right? So all you really have is right now. At least that's what I think. Is that where you're coming from on that kind of?
Yeah. I mean, it really is. Like we are here now, and the best thing we can do for ourselves is try to be present and not focus on the past too much and not focus on the future too much.
Yeah,
it's good to keep in mind, but if you solely focus on those things, you're not really living.
Yeah, I would agree with that. You mentioned something about being alone with your camera and stuff, and I was curious if you think. Some people are very camera shy, right? And I know you help people make videos and stuff. And I've heard a really good technique is to pretend your camera is your friend. Just pretend they're your best friend or whatever, and you talk to it like it's your best friend. Do you think that's a good, helpful technique, or is there a more helpful
To start, I would say that, at least for myself, it is a technique that is really nice. But at the same time, one of the things is like if you pretend the camera's not there, and instead of internalizing all your thoughts and just kind of letting whatever thoughts you're thinking of just stay inside your head, you just let them come out. And for some people, I know that's hard. I know that it can be really hard for some people, but being able to sit there and kind of speak out loud whatever you're thinking is really, really helpful, because having the camera there is a great way to listen back on yourself and kind of like hear what you're saying. But just being able to talk out loud whatever you're feeling, whatever you're thinking, really starts integrating this like, okay, I can say these things out loud. I can actually talk about them. And especially if it's something you're passionate about, like for me, talking about my journey and everything like that and getting out there on it, it's like, wow, I'm not held back by an invisible wall of what my mind is. Whatever is going on inside my head doesn't have to just stay there. It can actually come forward. And so using the camera like your friend is great, but also just in a way thinking of it as not being there is also really good.
How do you implement that? How do you like take yourself out of your mindset where, because you're looking into the camera. So how do you take yourself out of like, oh, that camera's not even there. I'm just talking to what? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, well, it's because it's very much like the camera's right in front of your face. But essentially, if you think of it like, okay, the camera's here, but it's not recording. The camera is in front of me, but it's not on. And you can kind of like diverge that into like taking it to where, because a lot of people when they get camera shy, they're really worried about staring into the camera. Half the time, I'm not staring into the camera. Half the time, I'm like either staring off the camera or staring at something else. It is best practice to stare into the camera and talk directly to the camera. But when you're just starting off, that's difficult. If I looked back at my old videos, I'm looking off to the side. And sometimes I'll even be like centered off to the side, kind of speaking sideways. And over time, and this is primarily for me because everybody is different, I was able to start developing a sense of comfortability in front of that camera, in a sense of like, this isn't really that big of a deal that this is in front of me. And when it came down to it, especially when recording, so you record your stuff and then you post yourself, but you have this in between where you can just watch it, So why fear the recording? If you don't like what's being said or what you've said, you don't have to post it. You don't have to put yourself out there. Just record it and then go from there.
For sure. And editing's your friend too.
Oh yeah. Because I say so and all the time. Mm-hmm. All the time. And even now I'm like consciously trying to make sure I'm not speaking that way and that I'm taking my time when I'm speaking. So I'm saying things deliberately without having those pauses.
Right.
But it's so hard in front of a camera.
It is. One of the reasons I started this podcast and that I do solo podcasts is because I would do these live streams for different social reasons. And here I'm saying, but the point being that there was a lot of uhs and empty space there. And I thought, let me just focus on just trying to speak, even if I have to slow down and talk a little bit more precise. And instead of saying, just think for a second and go ahead and speak. I think that's probably better than a lot of ums and uhs. And I've been told that it creates more of a suspense for people because they can see you're thinking about something and they're like, okay, let's see what he's got, because it should be thoughtful.
When I was in high school, I took a class, or technically it was a program, so it was called Studio. And I took that for 2 years. And what it was project-based learning, and then we did presentations. And when you're doing that, you are really kind of put on the spotlight when you have stage fright. Like you're just put out right in front of people. When we first started, it was just in front of our class. And then we had a thing called Expo where you'd have people walk around and we'd have a booth. That was a little difficult, but the second year is when it became really challenging because we actually got set up on a theater stage and I had no clue how I was going to handle this. One thing I realized that definitely helped is what you just said. Take your time, pause. People aren't going to really realize how long that pause is. To you, the internal struggle of you going like, oh, this is a really long pause is not that long when it comes to speaking.
Right. Yeah, I would agree. In college, I had a improv class. Have you ever taken something like that where it's like you are improving with other people and have to really work off of them and be quick-witted like that? That's really helps a lot. Oh, wow. I recommend if you get a chance, just take one improv class because it'll really help your skills a lot. Because you have to be quick and always say yes, by the way. That's like, I'm sure you've heard that, where you're like, yes, and like, no matter what they say, you have to build on that. Rather than no and shut them down, you just have to build onto what they're saying.
It's interesting because when you're speaking about that, I started remembering, I was over here because I'm in Georgia, and because there's a lot of filming that's happened, I actually went and was an extra on a set for 3 days. It was cool, but we had to do pantomiming, and it was the first time I had ever done it. So I was like, I had no clue what I was doing. I was just getting there. I had my stuff together, whatever. We did our clothing and everything like that. You had some people getting haircuts and all this. And I was like, what is all this? And then we get down onto the set and we start kind of like, they start running through with the recordings and everything like that. And they had the cameras everywhere. And they were like, oh, so you had to pantomime. And I was like, what is pantomiming? And there was a guy there that had been kind of doing this for a little bit. So he was able to explain it to me. And then for the next 3 days, I spent the entire time just having to sit there and act like I was speaking to someone, even though no one was saying a word. And that was an experience to just kind of get that, on top of the fact that one time the camera came up right next to my face. And I freaked out. I thought it was like, okay, I have to move out of the way. And they were like, they had to try to whisper, like, stop, don't move. And so then I'm having to pantomime right with the camera right here.
Yeah, put you kind of on the spot there.
Yeah, very much so.
What was that show? Has that come out yet or anything? Have you seen yourself on a show?
Yeah. What's funny is I don't know the episode. I know it's The Resident, which is like a hospital drama TV show. Okay. But I have no clue what episode I'm in. My old boss, because I was working at GameStop at the time when I was doing this, I told my old boss, and she was watching it, and apparently she saw me on there, but I didn't see myself. So I still haven't seen that episode. And we were on set for 3 days, but it was just one episode and like one scene. And I was like, okay, well, I guess maybe eventually I'll see it.
Right. That's fun. Is that paid work? I've always been curious about that, to be like a extra like that.
Yeah. So it's paid work. And the way that it's done is actually like really nice as far as paid work goes. So you're paid hourly. But you're also paid time and a half if it goes over. And then if you go under the time, you're just paid for the full day that was described in whatever contract.
Okay. That seems fair.
Yeah, it was nice because like the first day we were on set. I mean, I had to drive almost 2 hours to get to set. And then I was there for about 12 hours and then I had to drive back. So I was like very, very tired, but I was like, okay, I got time and a half. Because it was $10 an hour for 10 hours, so $100 a day. And then we went back the second day, and it was only 8 hours that second day, which was nice. I was like, okay, cool. And then the third day, we were only there for 4 hours. That's it.
Yeah.
But I still got the money, so I was like, okay, cool.
Right. And then I bet you have to wear like the same clothes every day and dress, because you're probably filming in the same scene. It's probably supposed to be the same time frame and stuff. So.
Yep, I had to wear the same clothes. And honestly, it was interesting because like you can bring your own wardrobe, at least on that set you could. So I brought like a few different options, and the set designers or costume designers, I don't know too much about like bigger productions. So I'm like, okay. But they came up and they were like looking at my stuff and like, I guess you wear that one. So it's like a teal button down shirt. Is that what I have on? And it's kind of popped out more than everybody else's stuff. And they had me walking around like everywhere. I don't know what it was, but something about me had me going from, and it's like I'm trying to remember the exact area that this was set up in, but it was like a 3-story area where it was open in the center and we were all at the base. So it's kind of like walking into a hotel or like front office, but like one of the nicer ones. Mm-hmm. In this area, I literally was going in like a giant circle and upstairs and downstairs. So I was everywhere in this, and I still have yet to see the episode and see myself where I'm standing out pretty easily. So it was pretty interesting.
You should pursue that, man. You should pursue it. Check it out. Put it on your resume, you know? Speaking of your business, I'm curious what got you started on this path. Was it, being in a production like that, or what actually got you started on, wanting to do camera work and helping other people do it?
So, man, this is one of those. It could be a long story, but let me try to make it short. All right. I've always loved entertainment, like always, 100%. I've always been into it. I watched way too much anime and TV shows and video games ever since I was younger. That was what it was for me. I used it as kind of a form of escapism, which is actually pretty interesting. Because now that I think about it, I'm like, wow, this is why I love this stuff so much. It's just like I was able to not have to feel the pressure of what was going on in my life. I had to divorce parents and, drama, family drama, and all this other stuff. So I was able to okay, I could play video games with friends or by myself, or I can watch these shows. And I just always felt so invested into it. So from a young age, I wanted to go into that. But my destiny, as I put quotes on that, because it was what my father wanted me to do. He wanted me to go into engineering. So when I was going along this path, I didn't know how I was going to make the steps. I went through a bunch of different things to kind of try out stuff. But I ended up going into a university for my first semester, which I ended up dropping out my first semester. But I went to a university for computer engineering and then dropped out because I couldn't do it. Like the idea of going into this and sticking with it for a university was just not me. Kind of going back to who am I? That wasn't me. So I came out of that. And when I came out of that, I was trying to find out any kind of avenue of how I could get into entertainment. And how I could get into, creating videos or video games or being a part of this in some way. As I started to do that, I started to hear a lot of different things about the entertainment industry and hear about how certain people working 70 hours a week to be on, the film sets or to be in a video game studio. And that just wasn't what I was really interested in. So I wanted to be a part of this, but I didn't want to be part of the big stuff. And as I was looking around trying to figure things out, I had a friend who he was into using cameras, and he's the one that kind of got me into really getting behind a camera myself. And he actually gave me one of his cameras, and he gave it to me for photography. And I was like, okay, this is cool. Let me see how it works. And I started kind of going with him. I would he would go do something and I would go with him to go do it. He did a lot of sports, photography and videography, primarily for parkour. And you know what parkour is?
Yeah. Very cool.
Okay. So he did stuff for that. And basically anytime that he himself, because he was also an athlete, he wanted to go do something. He was like, hey, take my camera, follow me. And so then I started doing it. So then I was behind the camera while he was doing stuff. And then I would help him take these shots and everything. And I just started falling in love with it. And I could not think about not doing it. It wasn't something that was all encompassing for a long time. It was just kind of oh, this is cool, kind of like a hobby. And I would be doing this. I ended up starting to, before I actually got a different camera than the one he gave me, because the one he gave me was a little bit older. I got a new phone, started using that to take some product photography. And this is when I started really getting into trying to figure out how cameras worked and trying to figure out how I should be shooting properly and doing composition and all these fancy terminologies. But I got into that and I was like, wow, this is cool. But I was using my phone. And then it was 2 years ago, 2020? No. I was let go from my job. I was at a digital marketing company doing SEO, and I got let go. And when that happened, I was like, okay, I'm going to do some stuff part-time. To be honest, I got my stimulus check and I was like, I want to get a camera. So that's when I ended up getting a camera. So a little bit of a compact mirrorless camera, but it's the Sony A7C, and it is phenomenal. I can vlog on it. I can take photos with it. I can shoot 4K and do all these different things. And now that I had the physical camera, I started being like, whoa, this is cool, because I was watching a guy on YouTube, Peter Mckinnon, and I could see stuff he was doing. And then I wanted to try to imitate it. I want to see, can I do the same thing?
Mm-hmm.
And I started kind of going back and forth with trying to do something that he was doing, as well as doing what I was doing, as well as working with my friend and learning from him, because he was kind of my mentor at this point, where he would teach me how to do stuff. And then I just kept going. And then I was like, well, I want to start a YouTube channel. 2017, I wanted to start a YouTube channel, but I was such a perfectionist that I just didn't. now I have my camera. I have no excuses. I have no excuses not to start my YouTube channel and not to make it how I want to have it, which is still evolving, but you know, we're learning and we're growing.
Yeah.
And then I started to get onto TikTok more, and I started actually seeing how there was a lot of these like different tips and tricks for people. Like, oh, you can like get your camera set up like this, or you can like do this. And I'm like, all right, I now understand how a camera works. I now understand certain things like lighting and such like that to be able to actually get a better image. I mean, the image quality on my computer right now is not great, but due to the fact that I have lighting in kind of a correct area, it's all right. But I started learning these things, and I was like, is there a way to kind of help people out with this stuff? And that's where I'm going right now, which is how can I take the fancy terminology and all this complicated stuff, like one of the like front light. There's a front light right here, but it's called a key light for a lot of like videographers and stuff like that. Well, okay, for the common person who's just trying to make TikToks, but their camera quality is not that great. Well, if they just simply use, you know, the key light, that would go over their head. I would say, hey, you should have a light in front of you. All right. So now I got to start figuring out, how do I start taking each aspect of this technical stuff and give it to people so they can just have better quality videos, so they can start creating stuff where it doesn't look like they were filming it in, you know, 2005.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, one of the greatest things I think about teaching those things, especially on TikTok, is like it really helps you as the teacher get more concise about how stuff works, and you start to figure it out even better yourself. You know, and then TikTok, of course, the limit of 1 minute, or it used to be the limit of 1 minute, really helps you compact it down to the most necessary things. So, but I noticed on your TikTok, see, I've done a little digging on you and you know, checked out all your links and things like that. And I've been following you on TikTok for a while. And you've been doing some story stuff, which I think is pretty cool. And I like the quality that you go for, because it seems like you go for a little bit of a higher quality than just your standard TikTok.
Yeah. And that is, for my personal account, I was really debating how I was going to go with things. I actually tried for a while to kind of keep things up, like with what you and I are talking about right now, as far as like talking to people about cameras in like the business and stuff like that. I was trying to do that on my personal account, but it was always just, oh, I'm going to take my phone, I'm going to put it in front of my face, I'm going to record something that is on my mind right now. But then it just wasn't interesting. I had nothing really put together for it. And so when people looked at it, they just went right off of it. So I was getting average of like 156 views. Mm-hmm. That's it. And as you know, I'm not sure if you've talked about Kip much on this. Have you? He's
been brought up several times. Yeah.
Okay. So if somebody's a regular listener and they know of Kip, well, Kip and I were talking, and he's one of the ones that kind of pushed me more towards focusing on video. Because originally for my company, I was trying to do a bigger umbrella. I was like, okay, I'm going to do digital marketing, I'm going to do websites, and I'm going to do like video and like photography stuff. But because I have experience in all, that's true. But the thing is it's not niche enough, and I'm not able to provide quite the value that I could for people if I was just being more specific. Mm-hmm. So Kip and I we like started discussing it, and he just kind of like was able to help me just be like, well, just do what you want to do, which is what I want to do is create skits and stuff on my TikTok. So I made my business account, which I haven't posted as many videos as I really should. But, you know, 13th Hour, I don't remember it's LLC or just 13th Hour on TikTok, but it's there. I have a few videos up on there. But then I have now my personal account, which is moving more towards this skit. And what's really happening is the primary to become a hero story that I now have on there.
Well, it's more authentic to just have a personal account and you're your own brand almost. Mm-hmm. I mean, would you agree with that, or do you think it's important to have a separate business account?
It's actually pretty interesting because it depends on where people are in their cycle and like, you know, with creating content or, you know, being artistic or anything like that, or wanting to create skits or have their own business. It really depends where you are. For me, I am so at the beginning that I could set up these two things and start having them kind of function on their own. For certain people, I've mentioned this guy a lot, but he's really a big inspiration for me. But this guy's Peter Mckinnon. He is a phenomenal photographer and videographer and YouTuber. And he also has a bunch of different like deals and stuff for his business and such that he does on the side. I don't know if he actually has a business, as in like, I don't know if it has a name because he never talks about it, but he does have like certain things where he's like, oh yeah, I'm doing this shoot for I'm trying to think of one of the last ones. It was some Christmas thing he did. It was for a car. Either way, he did something for that. And he was like, oh yeah, so I did this commercial work. So like, obviously he's doing commercial work and stuff like that, which is definitely behind a business. But I don't know if he's doing it as a sole proprietor or if he's trying to put it under an LLC or if he's just not talking about it and he has his own thing set up. While for me, I'm like, okay, I have these two different things where I want to help people and educate them on how to create great videos. But then I also have a personality, and since I'm coming into myself and learning more about myself, I really just want to, create funny stories and stories that are kind of emotional and stuff, which I made a funny emotional story on my YouTube and I can talk about that later. But doing stuff like that is really kind of something behind me. And so I'm like, okay, now I have these two things and they're separate, but I still run one. And the whole thing with the, my business with 13th Hour is I do want that to function separately for me at some point in the future. So regardless of what happens on my personal account, no matter how much that takes off or anything like that, I still want 13th Hour to become its own individual thing. And if you haven't heard of the book, The E-Myth, have you?
Yeah, I've heard of it.
In that book, they use the terminology turnkey franchise, and it's about, being able to have it to where you could basically hand over the keys to somebody else and they can run the business. That's what I want for 13th Hour.
Yeah.
But I still want to be able to push at the beginning to get to that point. So it's a whole interesting thing. I don't really know how it's going to go, and I'm not 100% set on determining it at this point. I'm just like, let's see where it goes and let's just create and keep creating.
That's fair. I think that's a fair philosophy. I don't think there's probably one right way to do, anything for that matter. So one of the things I do want to get into a little bit more here is a lot of times we will talk about mentors, and you've brought up a few so far. Is there any mentors that have been particularly helpful to you along the way, and what did they do for you? And how important is a mentor to you anyway?
Oh man, that one's difficult. So I could talk about the three main people.
Go for it. Yeah.
So first, I'm going to talk about my good friend, Colton Sweeney. Although we're the same age, he has been a mentor to me. For me, and goes along with my learning style and just how I like to be able to be physically like there and to learn stuff. He was great because he was able to show me how the camera worked. He was able to show me how editing worked, and he was able to like kind of really help push me to being the person that I wanted to be. And that goes with the camera, and even later down the road that has gone through with our friendship and just being just a better person in general. As well as really coming into myself and learning more about myself. But for him and having him there is phenomenal. I can't really describe how it is to have someone that can help push you like that. Like I try to be a very independent person, but to be able to have someone that I can be like, I can look up to, I can ask questions, and they know more than me, because there's always somebody that knows more than you, but they know more than me, is so nice, because there are times when I get stuck. And whenever I get stuck, I can go look at Google and I can ask these questions, but sometimes I don't know how to ask the questions. Sometimes I don't know what I'm trying to find. And so having somebody that has experience in any of this is great. So then that leads me into Peter Mckinnon, who I would say is an online mentor who is more so just like, more of like we haven't ever talked. So he's a mentor, but it's more like educational. I watch his videos and I also try to like mimic the stuff that he's doing. And that is great because you have somebody who is really high up in what they do. So Cole, he's great at what he does. He's great at what he knows, but then Peter Mckinnon is higher than Cole. So Peter Mckinnon has such an understanding on doing videos and doing photos that it would take years upon years of experience to even remotely reach his level. Mm-hmm. So it's great to have someone that, like, even if I'm just watching their YouTube channel, that I can go and, let's say if I'm trying to figure out something for Cole. He doesn't know it because it's higher than what he has known. Well, I can go look it up on YouTube. And okay, now here's a video from somebody I trust, someone who has created great content. I'm going to watch that video.
Right. And they can even teach you stuff that you didn't know you needed to know, which is...
Yes. That leads into Kip, who has taught me so much about myself on things that I didn't know I needed to know. That definitely is more of a personal level of facing my own demons and learning more about myself through that. But yeah, that actually led right into Kip, so that was great. Yeah,
that is great. So it's like you have one mentor that it's kind of hands-on, and he can help you with particular questions that maybe Google can't. And then you have a next step up, which is like someone that can teach you things that you never knew you even had to know. And then you have someone like Kip who's, I don't even know how to describe what Kip does. He's pretty much a magician as far as getting you to understand yourself, I guess. Maybe is his good talent there. So.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So how about yourself? Like, what unique skills do you think that you have, besides these people that have helped you along the way so far?
I am very stubborn. I'm very stubborn and determined. So when I want to learn something and truly want to learn it, I go into it 100%, 110%, and I will keep pushing until I figure it out. So that's definitely one just skill and part of me that has always stuck out. But also, I'm patient. I know that things are going to take a long time. I have been impatient a lot of the time, but in the end, like with my business, I tried to rush into it. It didn't work out. I took a step back, but I haven't let it go. I'm still going to keep going with it. I'm still going to keep trying. So those are definitely probably the two biggest ones. But the last one is just, I'm naturally creative. I'm not trying to toot my own horn here or anything like that, but I've always had a knack for, creativity and arts. I never took a traditional art class. I never went into anything like that. And my sister did. She went into art in high school and all this stuff. I just would get bored and draw in my arms.
Like you draw like tattoos and stuff on yourself?
Yeah, I have old photos of just all the things I would draw on my arms. My teachers would get so mad at me because I wouldn't be paying attention to the class. Half the time I was just auditory listening to whatever they had to say. Drew on my arms, and while I was drawing my arms, I was kind of like mentally mapping what was happening. I don't know how my brain works. I just know it was there, and then I passed tests and everything like that. So they get mad, but I still pass in class. Yeah,
well, some people just learn that way. Some people, I was a doodler. I doodle on paper and pencil and whatever, and it's like I still did well. I did fine. It's like you might think they're not paying attention, but that's like maybe the way they're learning.
I do remember one last skill set, I'd say, that I have. And that's critical thinking. That is something that is highly, highly important. And that goes back to like trying to ask like questions and figure things out on your own. Because yes, I have mentors and stuff like that, but most of the time I do try to figure out my own stuff before I try to go to anybody else, because I want to learn something myself. And so I will dig deep into it, again, with the stubbornness. And I will critically think about how I could solve this problem and then be able to come up with a creative solution or just a regular solution, depending on what the problem is.
Yeah.
But that's 100% a huge one.
Right. And that doesn't mean going to Google and typing in the question. That's like asking yourself the question and working it out, correct?
There's a lot of different ways that critical thinking has been interpreted and put into perspective. For me, myself, I think critical thinking on just a very basic level, asking Google a question, because there's a lot of times when somebody will start asking questions and stuff like that, and they won't just do something so simple. And it does frustrate me at times. I get a little bit like, wait, why don't you just use Google to figure this out? Because sometimes they'll get all upset because they can't figure something out or they don't know something, but then they won't go search for it themselves. And to me, it just doesn't register, because automatically, if I'm having like a question or something like that, unless I know somebody else knows it. If I know somebody else knows it, I might ask them first just because I prefer the conversation. But I'd rather just, I don't know. It's a little, I'm not going to put my hands too deep into that.
Yeah. No, I think I get where you're coming from. I mean, sometimes Google has the answer right there. And it's something very simple, like, how do I operate this, piece of machinery? Google has that answer. But like some critical thinking, I think comes from, reaching deep inside and understanding of what you would do in the situation. Like, what's a good situation? Like there's times where, I don't know, let's say you're in a dispute with your partner. You're not going to go to Google and like, how do I get out of this dispute with my partner, right? You're going to go to yourself and be like, what do I do in this situation? Would you say that's critical thinking?
Yeah, that would be. Yeah, that would be. I'm very analytical at times. So generally when I'm thinking about this and stuff like that, I'm going straight to something that's more technically based rather than emotionally based. So relationships and stuff like that.
I was trying to understand where you're coming from with the critical thinking. So, I like to clarify and just make sure I understand you. That's all. So let's move on anyway. One of the questions I like to ask is, what was your biggest hurdle and how did you overcome it? So like so far, like with your business.
I'm just going to say kind of the overarching, like getting to try to be creative, getting to try to, do artistic things. The biggest hurdle, let's say there's two. First of all, biggest one, of course, money. Yeah, having money. It's so hard. I still am trying to figure that one out. I'm trying to get a day job so that I can pay for things. But the second one, and this one's a little bit more like personal to me, is just the family and their, what they think is right for you. I understand that your family is there. They love you. They care about you. They want what's best for you. But when you're trying to do something like this, and especially my family, where my grandfather's a psychologist, my uncle is, he's a doctor. My dad is a data analyst. So like they're all in these very like high-end professions, and they have, money and all this stuff. And I'm over here being like, I'm going to create videos. It's very hard for them to see what I'm trying to do and for them to support me on it, because they see how they got to where they're at and they want me to do the same thing. And it doesn't always work out the same way.
That's not to say they aren't probably valuable in some ways to, in the making videos though, right? I mean, are they not supportive at all, or is it like a...
No, they are supportive, as in like, they're like, oh, that's nice. Like my grandfather sent me this thing of, I'm trying to think of what it was there was some type of wine competition for videos because he's into wine. And he was like, you probably can make something better than some of these. So they're supportive in that way, but they also, again, they love me. They want me to be able to be well off and to, handle myself. So, when it comes to me trying to push for the business and stuff like that, they're like, haha, no, how about you go, work at a warehouse and make, whatever amount of money and just save up a bunch of money. But I'm stubborn. So I'm like, no, I want to make the business work.
It's your life anyway, right? So ultimately you have to decide what you want to do, and they're just probably love you either way. So
they definitely do.
So here's another question I have for you. You're into a lot of social media. What's your take on newer ones like Clubhouse or Green Room?
I have no opinion because I have not like tried to get into those. It took me a minute to really want to even get into TikTok, because like social media, ever since I was working at that company, was doing digital marketing and stuff like that, social media has become more and more something that business wise, I don't like focusing on. So creative wise, it's kind of like, where can I put myself and be seen the most, and, be able to get my, my videos and stuff like that out there. So, YouTube was an obvious choice. Instagram for photography was great up until they started making the changes. Now it's kind of like, I don't know if I should even really care anymore. Facebook is just confusing. I don't understand half the stuff that happens on Facebook, and I'm just kind of like, okay, whatever happens, happens. And then, TikTok, of course, is great. But anything that's newer, I haven't tried to put myself into, because I'm still trying to learn how to really facilitate everything else with what I'm trying to do, with personal or business. And even though I worked at a digital marketing company and I worked in social media, I wasn't in it so far that I was able to like learn all the ins and outs. I learned how to be able to set things up to where you can be creating consistent posts, on all multiple channels and posting them and scheduling them out. I learned that. I learned easy ways to make graphics and stuff like that, such as using Adobe Spark or Canva or anything like that. I learned how to do that, but when it came to getting really deep into analytics and knowing how, like, where your customers are centered and all that, it wasn't that deep. So it's an area that I'm moving away from.
Yeah.
I'm moving away from like really being integrated into that. I have heard of Clubhouse though, but I thought that was and this could just be, again, not knowing enough, but I thought it was something that you had to be invited into from somebody who was already a part of it.
Yeah, it used to be that way. They just started letting people in regularly, but it's basically a social media app where it's all audio based, but you're networking with, they'll start a room and it'll be someone like Grant Cardone, who's like a billionaire, and he'll start this room and everybody will be in it and have a chance to speak with him and ask questions and that kind of thing. And it's just like, it's almost like a big podcast or something like that.
So is it like, when you say audio, so does it mean like someone starts the room and people join? Is it them like sending audio clip messages, or is it just like people are just talking? So
it's live in real time, and the host will invite people up on what they call the stage, and you can have as many people on the stage as the host wants, but everybody basically has their mic on silent except for the two people talking, and they just take turns and ask questions, and you can sit in the audience and listen to all this if you want as well.
I listen to a company, and they do YouTube and everything like that, but it's called The Future without an E. And great for creatives, by the way. But I feel like the last few podcasts I listened to, they talk about like doing Clubhouse sessions, but I always thought it was something else. I think my brain is just finally starting to connect things.
Okay.
Because I was passively letting it go by, and now it's like, oh wait, now it's all connecting. It's starting to hit. So yeah. I actually probably heard about that one, but I don't know about the other one. You say Greenhouse?
Oh, Green Room. It's Spotify's version of Clubhouse. They wanted to try to make their own version of Clubhouse, and that place is a mess compared to Clubhouse. It's like a bunch of musicians trying to promote their music and that kind of thing. So it's a bit more of a mess. I would go to Clubhouse before I went to Green Room, but they get compared a lot because Green Room just basically said, hey, we're going to take exactly what Clubhouse does, but do it over here. And they started giving like a form of crypto to come over to Clubhouse. To come over from Clubhouse to Green Room. They did this like crypto thing. So are you into the crypto stuff?
Okay, interesting.
Do you like crypto?
I am very much, try not to put my foot into something this is going to take too much time to learn right now.
All right.
But I have a friend, that same guy, Colton Sweeney, he's into it. So if I have questions or anything like that, I always go to him because he really knows all about it.
Yeah. I was just curious it's not something for everybody. I know. It's just a lot of people seem to be into it lately. I do a little dabbling in it myself, but just curious about where you stood on it. Is there anything else you want to say about your business, 13th Hour?
Yeah. So currently right now we have or how I have it set up is 3 different sections. All right. So we have the Learn It section, which is going to be primarily based around like, okay, you can learn certain things from going to our social medias or sending us contact and trying to reach out, as well as doing consultations. So if you just have something that you want to learn that is related to your business and videos, reach out to us and we can figure that out. If you want to do collaboration, which is going to be more hands-on, so like you have an idea, you don't know exactly how to facilitate it, but you still want to be a part of the project and not completely hand it off, then you can reach out to us and we can set something up to where we can actually get together and collaborate to make that idea happen. And then the last one is hand it off. And hand it off is a little bit more specific because you're handing it off to us. So I want to make sure that what we're doing is within the range of what we want to do as well as what we're good at. So primary videos that you can hand off to us would be highlights for products or services. So we can create videos for your products or services. This one is slightly a little bit like we still probably need you in it, but interviews, if you want to do like an interview style video. So it could kind of be in collaboration, but it's more so we're still behind doing all the production and stuff like that. You're going to have to be there to do the discussion itself. And I had one last one for some reason. It's escaping my mind at this point in time. But yeah, those are the three primary ones: learn it, collaborate, or hand it off. And it's just, again, I want people to be able to make great videos and great quality videos as well, because there's a lot of people out there and there's a lot of information, but it's not always easy for people to understand.
Yeah, well, that sounds cool. I mean, it sounds like a valuable service to people. So if you're looking to do videos, it sounds like you're the guy to go to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's make it happen.
So I asked this to everybody, and it's okay if you can't answer it, but some people find it hard. Some people love this question. But is there anything I should have asked you today, but I did not ask?
I think I might have something. Okay.
Yeah?
Something that I at least wish you would have brought up or asked is, what is the difference between being an artist and being a creative?
Let's hear your answer. I'd love to hear that answer.
So the thing is like, I wish you would have brought this up, but at the same time, it's still very difficult for me to answer. Because I even looked up the definition, because I was like, what is technically the definition of a creative? And actually, give me 1 second?
Yeah,
I might be able to pull it up real quick.
Go for it.
Okay, so definition as an adjective is that relating to or involving the imagination or original ideas, especially in the production of an artistic work. And then for the noun, a person who's creative typically is a professional context. I have no clue what that one is. These are Oxford Dictionary. So that is by Google's definitions. But the thing is, there's a lot of like terminologies that we're using nowadays, at least like creators and creatives and stuff like that. And I feel it's kind of harder to like go to look at a dictionary definition and be able to see the same things, unless there's that one dictionary that's always up to date. I don't know which one it is. But I believe that if you are a creative, you can also be an artist, and more likely than not, you are an artist. And I believe that because if you're trying to create something, and even if it's funny or not, if you're trying to make a statement, at least for myself, even when I'm creating something that I think is funny, I still have something in my head that wants me to talk about something else as well. So when I'm coming forward with an idea, I want to make sure that, okay, even if this is funny, there's some type of emotional understanding and there's something more to it that is artistically inspiring. And that's a little hard to put together and think about all at once. So am I creative? Am I an artist? I believe I'm both. And are most people out there that are considered creatives, are they also artists? I think so. That is more of a personal opinion, and I'm not the expert in this field yet.
Yeah.
So we'll have to see later down the road if that changes at all, especially for me.
Well, I feel like they're pretty similar. The only thing that made me do a double take is when you said that an artist works with emotion. And I thought, oh, maybe that's the difference between artists and creative. Like a creative just creates whatever, but an artist kind of goes for an emotional impact. Maybe that's the difference, but I don't know. I really don't know.
I'm not sure because okay, let's say, if you're a creative and you're making a funny skit and stuff like that, you're trying to make someone feel something still.
Mm-hmm.
You're still trying to make them laugh or have a good time. I think that you can be an artist and not technically be a creative. So you can create art, but not be doing stuff like this. But it's really going to be hard to say that you're creative, but not an artist. So if you don't want to be called an artist, but you're a creative, that's going to be interesting to see what you have to say about it. Interesting. So maybe a creative is just someone who puts their art out there consistently. Yeah.
This is an interesting conversation. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. I'm because it is it's a question I wanted you to ask, but I wasn't entirely sure if I knew the answer.
Yeah, that's okay. Let's discuss it and we'll figure it out,
Well, all right. So what is your definition of a creative, if you had one?
I never really thought of it. I just thought a creative is someone who creates things, someone who is creative and creates whatever they create, and that can be anything from art to sketches to, like a factory worker can be a creative, I think, if they're creating parts for machinery or whatever they do. I think that, but I like to think that there's art in everything too. So I guess I just smeared the terms together, creative and artist.
It's quite possible because when I think of creative, I think of more things pertaining towards social media and using those platforms.
Yeah.
Because, like, at least like a lot of the terminology, I mean, you hear influencer and you hear, I'm trying to think of another term for that, but, you hear those things, but then you also hear, content creator or creative. And so I think social media, and I think, okay, videos or photos and stuff, mainly videos, especially these days. But it's a hard one to, and I'm curious, if there's anybody that ends up listening to this and they have their opinion on it, that knows more about how to define these things and separate them. I'm curious what their thoughts would be, because let's say there's somebody out there that does like create content and create, and is a creative and on social media and stuff like that. Do they consider themselves an artist? If they're making funny skits and stuff like that, that's not like necessarily these beautiful works of art. And we'll put quotes on that.
Yeah.
At the same time, it's like, okay, if you see someone that puts on a horse like mask, right, and they're drumming in their bathroom, that's weird, but it's funny, and it's making a statement.
Yeah, and it's creative and artistic, so interesting. I think the word creative is kind of a newer word, though. Like in the advent of social media, creative has come up and kind of taken the place of artist, maybe.
I mean, that's quite possible, yeah.
Because like you were saying, it's like those words kind of came up, like influencer and creative. Those kind of things have just come up in the past couple of years, at least to mainstream that I've heard. And I've been an artist for years and years. So yeah, I think maybe it's a new word, just a newer, language, perhaps.
The English language is confusing.
It can be. It's, there's things that mean like 10 different things for one word. So, so before we close down, do you have any questions for me?
I guess, so you and I have met a little while ago, but, and I listened to one of your podcasts earlier, and I know you were doing podcasts, and I seen like your, a few of your clips come up on TikTok, but I haven't really been able to ask you, like, what is it that you fully do or that you like to do?
Like for a job or like?
Well, I mean, for a job or like a stuff on the side, like who are you?
Oh, that's a good question. So my big thing I like to do is audio work, right? Like whether it's playing music, which is something I've done for years and years and years, writing music, that kind of thing. But I also like work on other people's albums and things. Like I'm doing an album right now with a band called Rat Bath, and they're recording tracks and sending it to me, and I mix it down and make it sound like it could be on the radio, that kind of stuff. And I've had mentors that my audio mentor is Steve Albini. I worked with him, and I don't know if you know the band Nirvana, but he recorded Nirvana.
Oh.
Yeah, I worked with him for a while, and he taught me a lot of stuff. And, and that's basically how I met Kip, too, is he was looking for an audio guy. And I happened to meet him at that time when he was looking for an audio guy, and we started working together. So, yeah, that's me in a nutshell. I mean, I do other things, but audio is my world.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess very last thing for me as a question, that like when it comes to audio and working with audio, what is it that fuels your fire for it? What is that passion? Or is it an emotion or something else?
That's a good question. The fuel, I think, is, well, I just have a passion for it. I love it. I love hearing something go from nothing to something that sounds big and amazing, or just something that sounds like it's been forged into a particular sound, right? Like, because I'll get something okay, like the way I started music was, I learned how to play a chord on guitar, and the first thing I wanted to do was write a song. And I'm playing this one chord, and I'm like, hey, let me learn another chord here. And it was amazing to me to just be able to write something of my own and make it sound like I had in my head, right? So you're basically creating something from nothing. And I still carry that with me to this day. No matter what I'm doing, it's like, okay, well, I've got this tiny thing someone's given me, like, hey, they've recorded a full band and they don't know how to make it sound good. So I'll go ahead and I'll start and I'll make the kick drum sound really good. And then I'll make the snare sound really good. And then I'll make the guitar sound nice. And then the vocal and then all of a sudden you have this full blown production that sounds like it belongs on the radio rather than recorded in someone's garage. Does that answer the question?
I think so. Yeah. No, that was great.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I didn't expect that, but appreciate the question. Thank you. So before we go, do you mind telling people where they can find you online?
You can find me by looking up Matthew N. Thomas really on anything, whether that's most of my social media. It is just Matthew N. Thomas all together. That is with 2 T's, by the way. You 1T people. But then you can also go and look at MatthewNThomas.com if you want to look at like kind of more of my gallery for photography. And you can check out, it's MatthewNThomas.com/links for my socials. You can just really find everything on there, to be honest. And then if you're looking into more about 13th Hour, it's 13thHourLLC.com. So yeah, there's the places you can find me at.
Very cool. And I'll put those links in the description of the podcast and the YouTube. So cool. Well, thanks for being here, Matthew, and appreciate having you here.
Thank you for having me.